Please answer me! Please! Tell me your heart doesn't go out to Olivia Hussey's character in that scene. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are taking a look back at a horror classic, and that is Black Christmas. Directed by Bob Clark, starring Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, and John Saxon as Lieutenant Fuller. So this review is going to be dedicated to Margot Kidder, who unfortunately passed away. And yeah, this is one of my favorite performances by her. So yes, Black Christmas is a highly influential horror film. It's one of the first films that you could say is a straight up slasher film. And it had a huge influence on Halloween later on, and then Friday the 13th, and then all of those 80s slasher classics. So the film starts with, we find this man who has targeted this sorority house, this college sorority house with several teenage girls living there. And what happens is the killer targets this house, and he climbs up the side of the house and into the attic upstairs. And then he creeps down from the attic to actually go inside the house. And throughout the film we kind of see from his perspective, especially in that opening scene. That's why it's highly influential on Halloween, because Halloween we saw a very similar type scene in the beginning through the eyes of Michael Myers. So now we see from the perspective of this killer, and we see him creeping around the house. We always see he's watching the girls and whatever they do, and waiting for a moment to strike. So it starts with Olivia Hussey's character and Margot, who plays Barb, and Margot Kidder is great in this film. I think she's so funny. She's got a great personality. She's kind of a drunk. She's kind of flirty, you know. She's the type that has her heart on her sleeve and says whatever she's thinking, you know. One of those kind of people. So the girls start getting these really harassing phone calls by this really perverted guy. And he's saying really disgusting, demented things, and the phone calls are like terrifying. I've never heard anything like it. It sounds like there's 5 different voices going. It's crazy, and saying these really sadistic things, you know, things that I can't say in this video. You know, I don't want to go there. You know, let's just say sexual things. You know. So this guy's really perverted and sick and twisted, and Margot's character really doesn't care. He lets him have it, you know. She's like, why don't you go find a wall socket and stick your tongue in it? That'll give you a charge. You know. She takes on. She confronts the madman, and then all of a sudden the guy on the phone, his voice turns completely 100% normal and says, "I'm going to kill you." And that's even scarier. Like, wow, you know, all of a sudden he turned normal, and that really pissed him off. You know, now you're in trouble. Now you better watch out. And Barb's girlfriend Claire confronts her about that. She's like, "Why are you messing with this guy? Why are you taking him on like that? He's so dangerous. You don't know what this guy is capable of." And they really have it out. And then Claire gets pissed off and runs upstairs, and she's ready to pack her shit and leave, you know. And she starts hearing some noises going on in the house, so she goes to check in like the closet area where all her clothes are hanging up. And once she does that, bam, the killer comes out of nowhere from behind the closet and puts the plastic covering from one of her dresses over her face and suffocates her. And then later on, you see her body up in the attic, sitting on the rocking chair with the plastic wrapping, and her body's like rocking. You see it a lot throughout the film. But nobody knows she's up there. So the girls start freaking out that she's missing, And so they go to the police and report Claire missing. And they find out then that there's another girl missing in town. So now it becomes like, whoa, shit, is there like some kind of mass murder in the area? What's going on? And all throughout the film, we meet Olivia Hussey's character, and she's awesome in this movie, by the way. Olivia Hussey, I love her character. She's a fantastic actress. And we really sympathize her. I would say she's one of the best final girls, except technically she's not really a final girl the way the events of the film turn out. But if she was, she'd definitely be on the top. But at any rate, we learn a lot about her character. We learn that she's pregnant, and she talks to her boyfriend Peter about that. And Peter gets excited. Oh, wow, that's great. That's fantastic. But Jess is not ready to have a child. She tells Peter she wants to have an abortion. And then it becomes a real, you get that political talk going on, It's really eye-opening. It's thought-provoking. And it's interesting. And it's really well played in the movie. It's very dramatic, And Peter gets pissed off about that. He's like, what, are you crazy? But Jess is like, there's so many things I want to do. I'm really young. I'm in college. I've got so much I want to do. I'm not ready to have a child. I'm not ready to settle down with you. And he doesn't take too kindly to that. He's like, you selfish bitch. And there you start seeing, what's up with this guy as he created. And throughout the film, they kind of allude that he could be the killer. The one hiding in the attic and peeking in on the girls and making those harassing, perverted phone calls. And, so throughout the film, the killer is a complete mystery throughout the film. You have no idea who this guy is. You just kind of see his, eyeball in the shadows. Sometimes you might see a little bit of the top of his head, like his hair, And when you look at that, you can tell that it's a young guy, that it could be Peter, because Peter has longish hair, and he's young. So so we don't know. And so the phone calls continue, and the girls go to the police again. And at one point, Margot Kidder's character, she's really funny and bubbly, and the guy who works at the front desk, the deputy, she gives him the number to their sorority house, and she said, so he asks, what's the number? She says, fellatio. It's fellatio 2448. And he's like, what's that? I've never heard anything like that. She's like, oh, it's a new extension. And he totally buys it. And all the other cops laugh hysterically, like, dude, are you an idiot? And he's like, oh, I get it. It's something dirty, isn't it? It's a great scene. I love Margot Kidder in this film. She's great. And this is probably my favorite performance of her. And she's been in some great movies like Amityville Horror. And, of course, Superman 2. She played Lois Lane in the series with Christopher Reeve. And I still think she's the best Lois Lane on screen ever so far. There hasn't been anyone to top her yet. Because I love her in those films. She's a great Lois Lane. And, rest in peace, Margot Kidder. We'll miss you. Just most recently, she had been in the Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And that's one of the few things I liked about that film was Margot Kidder's performance as Laurie's therapist there. But I gotta say, I absolutely love Olivia Hussey's performance. She's gorgeous. I love her accent, and she's a fantastic actress. I love her in this movie. And I love John Saxon is great as Lieutenant Fuller. Everyone in this film is really, really good. And So throughout towards the end of the film, Lieutenant Fuller decides he's going to tap the phone line to see where the calls are coming from, to see if they can catch this guy and pinpoint where he is. And then there's that classic line that we've seen in a lot of horror films since. The phone calls are coming from inside the house. So yeah, this movie establishes a lot of those slasher tropes, you know. Like that POV shot from the perspective of the killer. You got the kind of final girl there. And you got the sorority house, which you've seen that in so many slasher films. Like Sorority House Massacre, House on Sorority Row, you know. And then you had the calls coming from inside the house, which we saw in films like When a Stranger Calls. And yeah, so this movie is incredibly influential. It's incredibly scary. It's very well directed. It's very well acted, and I absolutely love it. Black Christmas, I think, is an absolute horror classic. So guys, at anything you do, you got to see Black Christmas. If you haven't yet, run out, buy it, buy the DVD, the Blu-ray, whatever you got to do. You have to see this film because it's awesome. Black Christmas, directed by Bob Clark, starring Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, and John Saxon. So thank you guys for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.